Hi everybody, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Selena and I am your holistic guide and GAPS guru. I love to talk about all things GAPS and healthy living, natural living, and creating a non-toxic lifestyle and home. And today I'm going to be talking about this question that I feel like comes to my mind a lot when I'm talking with people about the GAPS diet, because I do love to talk to people about the GAPS diet. And the question is the GAPS diet really that hard? I have seen so many different people who have had tons of different chronic illnesses, and I am confronted with this question all the time because I could give all the advice in the world, all of the tips and hacks in the world, and still people really don't want to make this change around their food. And I gotta ask the question, like, is this really that hard? I've been asking that question, is this really that hard? And as I've been processing it, there's a lot of conclusions that I've come to, but I wanted to start with this story because I was in the sauna at the gym the other day, and there was these 4 Hispanic women in the sauna with me. And this one woman was, I do speak Spanish because I am Puerto Rican, so I understood what they were saying. I don't know if they thought I understood. This one woman was ranting about, she was ranting as the more fit woman to these lesser fit women about nutrition, and she was talking about how you got to make these changes because otherwise you're going to get diabetes and all these kinds of things, and how what you eat really does radically affect your health, and what it comes down to not just what you're doing, the activities, the exercise and all this stuff, but it really comes down to what you're putting in your mouth. I'm sitting there and I'm like, yes and amen, yes and amen. And she's telling these women who have pretty much every excuse in the book why they would never want to change their food. There was one woman who said she lost 55 pounds from intermittent fasting. She said, I'm not changing my diet until that stops working because this is working and I could eat whatever I want. And I was like, oh Jesus, But then there's this other woman who chimed in and she says, I don't need to eat good. I can just work it all off. I'll eat whatever I want. I'll eat the bread and the pizza and I'll go to the gym and just work it all off. And to that, this woman got very fired up. You can't just do that. She's like, that's not gonna work. If you put trash in your mouth, it doesn't matter how much you work out, you're not gonna be healthy. Si haces eso, no tendrás salud. I was sitting there laughing because this is totally my stuff. And she's going on and on about how you can start replacing foods, when one woman was like, I couldn't live without pizza. And she said, buy the cauliflower pizza at the store. They're so good and they're so much better. She was very passionate. And all that to say, I'm very passionate about this too in a different way, but I still believe that everybody can make these simple changes that can really benefit their health and their children's health, quite frankly. So is the GAPS diet really that hard? I pretty much tell every person I come in contact with about the GAPS diet. I feel like I'm a kind of a GAPS evangelist. I don't know what it is, but I honestly feel like God just plops sick people right in front of my path. Literally, it is all the time. I don't know what it is, but it is so frequent that honestly, I have talked with my husband so much about this question. I'm asking, like, is this really that hard? Like, making meat stock is not that hard. Learning how to do kefir is really not that hard. There's like a 3-minute video you can watch on YouTube. Is it making sauerkraut really that hard? Or is buying it that hard? Is adding this to a meal or changing out your oils, is that really that hard? And it definitely is a radical shift. I will be honest with you. I know it's a lot of different things to learn, but I'm left asking myself this question, like, if people are so sick and they're struggling so much and they're spending all this time in doctor's offices, like, is this really that hard to like change your lifestyle in a way that could really bring so much more health to your life? And my answer to this question I've found is that emotionally, this diet is extremely hard. Practically, this diet is not hard really at all, for what it's worth. Time-wise, money-wise, there's challenges. You have to figure stuff out for sure. But emotionally, this diet is extremely hard. And listen to me, the hardest part for me practically was finding a farm. I live in a state where raw milk is not legal. And I developed this mental block against finding farms because I had looked once and it was like the only all grass farm was an hour away, and I tried driving it and it was so stressful one morning before school. And I sat down one day and I was like, okay, stop. I really need raw milk because I can't do this like Whole Foods pasteurized stuff anymore. I really need raw milk. And I found a farm in literally a matter of 24 hours. It delivered, okay guys, really, it delivered 5 minutes away from me. And the whole year it had been doing that. They were delivering 5 minutes away from me. Mentally, it felt scary. I only knew of this one farm, it felt the website for this co-op was not normal. You can't just click buttons. It looks a little sketchy, and like you would have thought I was dealing drugs. All it took was me sending an email, and within 24 hours I was accepted into this co-op and could get raw milk 5 minutes away from me every single week. I don't think it was that hard, you know, all the shipping things and everything. I was having raw milk shipped like for like $50 from like 2 states over. It was the most ridiculous thing in the world. Now that's not like that in every state, but I do live in one of the most restrictive states. It was just mentally hard for whatever reason. And I do also think that GAPS is so countercultural that it feels way more overwhelming than it actually is. And I definitely understand this. I understand this on a very real level. My husband and I started GAPS like 3 or 4 months into our marriage. It was kind of nutty. I was finishing up school. He was working full time and finishing school. It was crazy. And what ended up happening was we stopped going out to eat, and my husband loves going out to eat. He loves it so, so much. This was a huge emotional adjustment for him. And I will say there's like tons of other emotional costs like that when it comes to the GAPS diet. I feel very awkward bringing my homemade food to work lunches when everybody goes out to eat, and I like break out my homemade food. And when I go to people's houses and they're offering me food and they just want to be hospitable to me and I have to say no. So if you're tracking with me, the emotional cost in a culture that values junk food, that values eating out, values treating yourself, is actually a huge cost. Time-wise, it's 100% manageable. I mean, listen, it takes a lot of time to learn, but once you learn it and once you get in the rhythm of it, it's very manageable. I will go into that in another video where I can do like the time analysis. Money-wise, definitely you're paying for it ahead of time, but it pays off in your health costs, right? I would venture to say for a lot of people who are already making their own food, it's not even that crazy. But why is it so hard for people? Now, how come this woman and I have to rant to people about how their health is worth it and there's all these easy substitutions and time that's worth your health and it's totally manageable and there's all these easy hacks you can do? Like, how come people are so passionate about this and then like 90% of the population just doesn't listen? Well, I think a lot of this comes down to change, and I think people really do not like change. Now, I think more than that, there's also this change that comes down on this heart level, especially for people who have been struggling with long-term chronic illness. And now, for a lot of people who have struggled with illness for a while, trying another protocol or trying another diet or trying another this or that, I've heard a lot of people say this to me, that it just feels so hopeless and overwhelming, and like you're asking all these questions of like, is this really gonna work? Am I worth this? Am I worth the time it takes to heal like this? And what if it doesn't work? And can I handle the heartbreak of another failed attempt at getting better? I think that at the root of this, oftentimes there's so much pain, and this pain is very, very valid pain that needs to be really acknowledged in this space, especially when there's so much options and GAPS, and it's very complex. We're dealing with extremely complex things, that there is so much pain around this area because it's a very vulnerable area to let people into. So that is why you will rarely see me screaming down anyone's throat this protocol. I evangelize it like it's nobody's business because I think it's so amazing, but it can be a really tender topic for people. And I believe at the same time, it's one of the most empowering things you can do for yourself. For someone who's not feeling well, it can actually start to feel like one of the most empowering steps you could take. But I also understand that because it can be so scary to take that step and so vulnerable to walk down that road, and most people aren't really willing to walk down. If you're struggling with that, I also just want to validate that experience. I think it's very, very real. The reality is that you've probably, if you're listening to this video, you've probably been through a lot. And for that, I am super sorry. I'm sorry that you've probably tried so much. You've probably been on the phone with insurance companies for hours, and you've probably fought tooth and nail and tried all these other things. And I'm sorry that the sacrifices feel so heavy, and that there is constantly this comparison between why is this so hard for me, but it's so easy for another person just to go out to eat and have fun, and they don't have to stress about anything like energy or food or whatever. I just want to say that I really am here to validate your experience. Every person has a reason for it being hard, for it being mentally hard, but for it also being this really deep emotional thing for people. So that would be my answer. Is the GAPS diet hard? In some ways, yes, for sure. In some ways, practically, I don't believe it is. For a lot of people that have experienced the deepest form of healing and strength from this, they're actually learning that you can have power in a really powerless situation. So that's the plus of it. But for others, it also feels like the beginning and the end of this is like unknown, and it can be really difficult emotionally if you've been on the protocol a while and you still aren't seeing the kind of benefits you're wanting, or if you're in the beginning and you have no idea what to expect. Counting the cost of living differently in the culture is actually really important. And I think also counting the cost of this is actually going to mean that I'm bringing my emotional self to the table as well. This is going to mean that I'm being vulnerable here, and I'm having to address these core beliefs and mentalities about healing that have always kind of been there, but with the GAPS protocol, they just come right out. They're all in the open because people have to process their healing journey on the inside if they're really going to take these steps to practically feel better physically. And so these are all real costs, and practically, meat stock, yes, it takes time every week. It can be very annoying. I'm on my second year of this, and it doesn't get like magically amazing after a certain period of time, but it doesn't really take that much time. So honestly, to me, that's not the hard part. It really is these mentalities we have around healing and being willing and able and ready really to confront some of that and to move into that and to really love yourself in a way that maybe you haven't loved yourself before. And that can be very, very challenging. I want to give one pro tip that for anyone who's thinking about doing the GAPS diet, do not do the whole thing at once. My personality, listen, I did the whole entire thing all at once. I did literally I was 0 to 100 in a month. And the emotional cost for that behind the scenes with my husband and having to process all this was that it went so fast that it was hard to keep up with. Do I regret it? No. But if you're on the fence about doing the GAPS protocol, I just want to encourage you that there are ways to start small. And if you're interested in getting started, my biggest tip for people who are on the fence and they're like, I can't change my whole lifestyle like that. Why are you drinking bone broth like every single minute of the day? There's no way I could do that, would be to take one tiny step. And steps that I recommend to people are start just making chicken soup once a week and save the rest and sip it over the weekend. If it feels daunting to make meat stock that you drink every single day, we'll start with just like changing out one dinner a week. That's not that hard. I mean, you're gonna have to make dinner anyway. Price wise, I'm like, go get some chicken wings, some spring water, and put some vegetables to make it taste good. And that's a pretty standard meal too. It's not that crazy. A lot of times I'll give people suggestions like replacing things. My whole idea is that if you can do like one little thing, if you read Dr. Natasha's book and you're like, heck no, I'm not doing enemas, well, do one thing. Like if you're gonna change something, just change out your canola oil and processed oil for some ghee. Like if that's all the change you can make in 1 week, picture how many changes you're gonna be able to make in the course of a lifetime. And that's what I'm about. I'm all about sustainability in the long run. I don't think that jumping into something and then jumping out and going to this diet and that diet and this diet and that diet is healthy. If you're trying to process the transition, I would encourage you go one step at a time, take it little by little, and go with the capacity that you have. Cutting out sugar all at once might feel way too overwhelming for you. Well, don't cut out sugar. Just replace sugar for a minute and see how that works. Replace one time you eat sugar and then go step by step. I really think it can be manageable that way. And I think that the emotional stuff is definitely worth being present for and being able to process. That's my encouragement to you. I know that this can be really challenging and that's a really hard question to answer, but I hope that that was helpful. Thank you so much for watching, and be sure to like this video and subscribe. It is my passion, as always, to walk alongside people as they grow and heal. It inspires me and hopefully brings encouragement to you. See you in my next video.